I awoke at 6 a.m. this morning, Saturday, the 6th of October, to a cool and dry breeze swirling through the bedroom, courtesy of a clattering metal fan perched in the open window. The radio weatherman had promised good conditions, but I had remained skeptical, as any Midwesterner does, until I saw it for myself. I arose, confronting the burnt yellow sun rising in the east-facing window. Other than a few shredded cotton ball clouds littering the sky, it was clear. A perfect day for a hunt. Now, the great state of Kansas has a big barrel full of legal hunting requirements for most animals. Elk, only August 1st to the 31st. Deer, only the first few weeks of September in some places. Prairie chickens, well, you get the picture. For outsiders, these strict rules and regulations present a right bunch of problems. Like you have to have the right license, the right gear, the right time, and let's not forget, the right amount of green to pay for all that nonsense. Fortunately for us, these constraints do not apply. Not for hunting humans, anyway. I had laid out everything I would need today on top of the large pine chest at the end of our bed last night. My calfskin square-toed boots, heavy denim overalls, white as my wife could get them tube socks, and as always, my lucky brown camo hunting jacket. The jacket had been my daddy's. Over the years, Mommy had meticulously added 10 or so pockets to it, which I'd already stuffed with a selection of razor-edged hooks, a skinning knife, my trusty tried-and-true bone mullet, 2 adjustable muzzles, some strong hemp rope, and, of course, duct tape, in case we need to keep the game quiet. Now, I know 2 muzzles seems a tad hopeful, but I have captured 2 in the same day, just a few years back. By golly, it sure would be nice to repeat that victory. Especially nice as this is my oldest, Henry's, first hunt. After bathing with the fresh water in the urn I'd pumped yesterday, I dressed and I shambled my way down the hickory wood backstairs of our narrow farmhouse, entering the kitchen. Henry sat at the far end of the table, bright-eyed as ever, gobbling down what was likely his second plate of fried mussel fillets. With his tar-black hair slicked under a plaid cap and already suited up in his very own camo flak jacket, I couldn't help notice he was the spittin' image of me 20 years ago. Jill, my wife, pecked me on the cheek. "Good morning, sir." She asked if I wanted the same breakfast as Henry. But I waved her off and opened the pantry, opting instead for a few sticks of tripe jerky I dried in our cellar last winter. I washed it down with a cup of piping hot black coffee. "Hank, sir, you're going to starve," she warned. I responded by pulling her into the mudroom, out of sight from the boy, and planting a long, sloppy one on her, whispering into the nape of her milky neck, "Gotta make it last until we get home." She giggled and whispered, "Last." Then she gently pushed me away with a pat on my cheek, along with a reminder that she had a lot of preparations to tend to if Henry was bringing home a trophy. God, I love that woman. We set out. I was quick to catch the screen door behind Henry so it wouldn't bang hard against the aluminum frame and wake our twin 7-year-old girls, Clara and Shelley, and Teddy the baby. With Henry galloping yards ahead of me, I started down the 2-mile dirt path that leads away from our porch and meanders through the thistle brush and high summer-browned prairie grasses. I consider them good friends who have shielded our family for generations. On calmer days, when the wind isn't rustling all the trees and such, you can make out the steady drone of the two-lane highway several miles to our east. But not today. Today, the faintly crisp, strong north wind is to our backs, rattling the surrounding vegetation and peacefully blocking out the ugly hum of the outside world. We'd walked about half a mile when I yelled up ahead for Henry to stop and wait. I turned and made my way down a rocky side path until I came to the old trailer Daddy still called home. He wasn't up yet, or the door would have been open, and he would have been clad in the same worn coveralls he always wore, smoking a pipe full of his homegrown tobacco. I never did get a taste for smoking, but I've made myself quite a few mouthfuls of chew before I became a father. Now, it somehow doesn't seem right to chew or smoke or anything self-harmful in front of my kids. Sins of the father, I guess. Funny, that's what Daddy always said, too. I made my way through the junked car and tractor parts, around the side of the old rust bucket, and unlatched the hutch where he kept the arsenal. I selected 2 rifles, one of them outfitted with a razor-sharp bayonet. Courtesy of the war, Daddy had mentioned more than once. He never said much more about the war than that. I wish he would, as I would love to hear about all the fighting and who got to eat the spoils. Daddy had ruled our home by the belt, and I carry my share of scars as a reminder to never ask him too many questions. Daddy always said questions were what got my mommy sent to an early grave. That notion served me well in ruling my own family. Why, just last night I'd had to tear into Jill a bit. Just a few good slugs to knock the breath out of her when she got to harping at me about, well, who knows what women go on about. Anyway, it made Henry cry, me putting his mommy in her place, and he jumped between us in her defense. I gave him a little taste of the medicine I was giving her, and that did the trick. He's a quick learner. I gathered up the rifles and ammunition, returning to the path out front. Henry was waiting halfway up on a gnarled ash tree limb. He shimmied down and bolted to my side. "Can I touch your rifle, Daddy?" he asked. I grinned and told him he could, covering up the trigger mechanism first. Henry's small, smooth hands ran up one side and down the other, his left index finger reverently tracing the edge of the bayonet down to its tip. "Wow," he uttered over and over. "Wow, wow." I handed him the .22 I'd chosen for him, the one we'd been practicing with last week. "Is it loaded?" he asked. Excitement splashed on his freckled face. I told him no, but he could carry it unloaded the rest of the way to the hunting spot, and we would load it together. He cautiously placed the rifle across his shoulder like I'd taught him, and marched proudly by my side as we continued along the twisting trail. After another mile or so of trudging, sticker bushes grasping at our legs, we arrived at my favorite hunting spot. It was just above a ridge next to a couple-mile-long gravel trail the State Parks Bureau had laid out for city folks bent on biking, hiking, or riding their all-terrain fancy painted vehicles a few years ago. Before all this development, me and my daddy used to hide ourselves in the tree canopies around various area fishing lakes. This new trail afforded us many more and much easier places to hide. The whole area is dotted with small ponds bordered with tall grasses and cattails, with huge felled clusters of old cedar trees piled up like small fortresses the entire route. Time to hunt. I took Henry's shoulder firmly in my hand to quiet him and led him to a pile of rotting cedar trees just about 6 feet high and dropped my gear. Startled pheasants took out like a shot from the hidden nest in front of us. Henry stifled a laugh while piling his gear next to mine on the hard, dry earth. Henry observed as I loaded my weapon. I had shown him back at home how I like to position myself. Both elbows on the ground, my left eye closed tight, my right eye staring through the rifle sight at the end of the long black barrel. I nodded to the ground, and he assumed the position to my right, about 5 feet behind me. I carefully inspected his stance, gun gripped properly in his steady and sweaty hands. I loaded it for him. I fished out some more jerky from my bag. We waited. It wasn't long. Through my field binoculars, a lone bicycler, all suited up in fancy tight neon breeches and a matching shirt, came within sight around the gravel curve about a quarter-mile away. He might as well be wearing a sign reading, "Come and get it." I leaned over and whispered behind me, "Remember, make your one shot his last." The exact same words my daddy always said to me. I cocked my gun, heard the safety lock tick off his, and set my aim. Then the dangdest thing happened. I felt the cold steel barrel of Henry's .22 against my right temple. I cocked my head to the right to find the boy with his left eye closed tight and his right eye looking straight down the barrel and into my eyes. "Son," I said sternly, not caring if the bicyclist heard me or not, "what do you think you are doing?" Sweat beaded across his forehead and his lips trembled. His voice caught in his throat as he replied, "Sir, you aren't going to punch on me and Mommy like you did last night. Not ever again." In spite of my predicament, I couldn't help but smile. Proud my son has the good sense to call me sir. Something else for which I'd had to lay into him and his mother for more than once lately. So the boy had taken his mother's punishment harder than I realized. I raised my hand and put a firm grip on the barrel, pressing harder into my temple. "Henry, you know it was for her own good, don't you, boy? Yours too." "Henry!"